Hello, Radioheads. You know this is Elle Man, and I'm here with filmmaker, director, writer Kayla Marriott. She's 24. You're 24 years young, and you've made how many films?
Well, there's one answer to that, and then there's the answer of how many I'm still willing to show people, which I think is
Okay.
like six. I've made films since I was young.
Mhm.
My family goes to Maine every year, and we make a movie in Maine. Uh,
Wow. What?
yeah, that's what we call it. So since I was like 8, I was writing and directing them, and my brothers are
Wow.
like a lot older than me, 9 and 7 years, and I'm like directing them. So I'm making films since then.
Huh.
I went to film school where I had to make like 4 films a semester, so it was really churning things out. But then there's how many I'm proud of and still like to show people. But like
How many
six.
are you proud of? Six, you said?
Yeah, about six, I think. They're all short films, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, live till 90 and never make two. So six, that's pretty great. All right. So we're going to
Yeah.
get right into it because today, I'm kind of a last minute person, if you didn't know. I watched the film A Calling Home, which she made. Now you made, it's a pretty moving short film. Now, can you just simply tell us what the film's about? Because we're going to spend a lot of time on this one.
Yeah, it's I make horror films, but I would say this is more of a psychological drama that follows our
Hmm.
main character Ellie. She returns to her former home to get it ready to sell, and she becomes haunted by her past possibly dead ex-fiance Owen. And then as she begins to pack up her belongings and get ready to sell this place, she becomes more and more haunted in flashbacks, and it's kind of told in a fragmented way. It jumps back and forth between the past and the present. And it reveals the true horror of the film, which is the inescapable nature of an abusive relationship.
Right. Right. So, okay, here's a long one. Maybe the longest question I've ever asked anybody, and I have some long-winded questions. Okay. We're all individuals, but archetypes of people and diagnosable personality disorders exist for a reason. To me, what I saw outlined in your film was a disturbing and truthful depiction of the typical narcissistic abuse, codependent relationship with an abuser, one clear victim, and it ends in reactive abuse and the common anxiety, depression, loneliness, loss, fear, and trauma that sticks with the victims for years. So while the abuser is acting like he did or she did nothing wrong and moves on to the next victim. Really common story. So to me, this film is a play-by-play of the events many women and many men have dealt with. Why did you feel the need to show us this very true cautionary tale outlining the trauma I have actually been dealing with in 2023? Pretty much cookie cutter.
Oh God. Well, I mean that's a shame that you have been dealing with that. But like you said, it's so common. When I was writing
Mhm.
it, the more people I would tell about it, they'd go, "Oh, that reminds me of this. That reminds me of that." And I think while it has been a story that's been told in different ways, or a lot of people are aware that this happened, I think a lot of people aren't. There's a lot of people that I've shown this film to, and it's kind of opened their eyes. I was at a screening, and an older couple was sitting in front of me, and it was towards the end of the film, and the the man leaned over and he goes, "Some of that's not abuse." And his wife turns and goes, "Are you kidding me?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh. I mean, this is why I made the film." It was
Huh.
that was kind of that's like it encapsulates why. But like you said, it's such an important thing that needs to be told, and I also think it's told in a different way that it's not making us a spectator. We're not just following her trying to heal from her abusive past. It's
Mhm.
told very viscerally, in the style of filmmaking, hopefully, that I do, that we become Ellie and we really experience what it's like to have trauma, that it's something that you live with forever, and uh, growing from it or healing from it, it's not linear either.
Mhm.
So
Right.
that's why it felt important to tell the story that way.
Yeah, so I was watching the film and obviously I relate to it because you read my questions. So you know. But how did you make it like I actually feel like I was with her, not because I was projecting myself onto her, not only because of that, but I did feel like I was with her. And you said you wanted the viewer to experience it. So what tricks in filmmaking did you use to make it an experience rather than a spectatorship?
Yeah, I think um not not making the way it was shot just objective, like we are just
Okay.
capturing these moments, really putting
Hmm.
us in the moment, the way I use the camera, and um that I think brings us right into it.
Okay.
um but I also need to shout out my main actress, Tara Mershon. She's just brilliant, and she's so magnetic. And you're
Mhm.
watching her, and she brings you right in. What she's expressing on screen feels so real and so true. And that's what I
Yeah.
try and do as a director. I don't try and uh, get anything fake out of people. I just try and bring like truth out of their performances and stuff. So I hope
Yeah,
we're doing things like that. And
you did.
yeah, just making it seem truthful, that it's a real experience, like I keep saying. And that was from writing directly from things people have told me, lines directly. Just first and foremost, going into every day writing the script, that I need this to be honest.
Right.
Was
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It definitely was pretty dead on. And there's nothing I can think of that felt fake by either of the actors. I feel like they both did a great job. Not that
Yeah,
I'm the czar of acting, but I felt like it was great. So
thank you.
moving on, really specific questions about the cat scene. So as someone who's witnessed others go through abuse, and I've dealt with it myself, and I'm almost 39, so I've seen people die and I've needed comfort. And you really picked textbook experiences that I've witnessed. So, for example, when we're dealing with toxic people, like screaming insults at us, and you look to self-soothe and you look to find comfort. So, your main character found comfort cuddling with and just spending some time with a really cute cat. And my own dog has given me some peace during all types of rough times. So, why did you add the cat scene specifically?
um there's the personal answer, which the cat's mine, and
Okay.
she has given me. I've had her for 10 years, and everything you just said, I've experienced with her. She's helped me through
Oh.
so much. But as a screenwriter, as a filmmaker, when I make horror films, you need a lot of times when you watch horror films, there's like a good breath of like maybe a comedic relief that breaks the
Mm,
tension. It's all about like
right.
release, right? So that's why through every version, that I knew that the small cat storyline was actually seemed small. And
Yeah.
this is my favorite question that you is that
Oh,
it's
really? Okay. I was like, I wasn't sure about this one.
I like
Okay.
it. It's because it was so important that
Hmm.
the short film is so heavy, but
Hmm.
we need these little breaths of moment with this cat. That's this levity. It gives us levity to the story.
Yeah.
It leaves Ellie on screen, but also the audience. They're able to take a breath and maybe start to process what's happening.
Hmm. Hmm.
We're in a safer place with this cat as we're
Right.
watching it. So
Right.
that's why I kept her in. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the cat definitely created a juxtaposition between the craziness and the hell.
Mm-hmm.
And it does give you a space of a breath. And also, just like anyone who really is dealing with a toxic person, which is such an overused term, or
Right.
an abuse situation, there are moments where everything's okay, and then things get crazy again when you least
Yeah.
expect it. And that's what you outlined. So
Yeah.
moving on to the next, the main character named Ellie. My name is Elise. Another, and the similarities with this are just beyond creepy today. So she's grabbed pretty violently while she's in the shower. She's just trying to take a shower, and the guy grabs her. Her boyfriend, is it her husband or boyfriend?
Her fiance.
Fiance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he doesn't respect boundaries at all.
Mm-hmm.
He screams at her. Some of her belongings are broken after they move in together. These are typical issues that I've seen in so many relationships.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the commitment is established, you'll have broken things, broken hearts,
Yeah.
lack of boundaries, but all those will be there before the commitment's there. And then
Mm-hmm.
he stereotypically uses, "Oh, that was last week," as a
Yeah.
defense for his violence, which I've heard. so many times. What? That was a few weeks ago. That was last month. That was yesterday. I'm not an
Yeah.
alcoholic today. I was drinking yesterday. I haven't drank. I don't drink anymore. You don't drink. How many days have you not drank for? 24 hours. So that's something that a lot of people who do horrible things do. They'll say, "Oh, that was 3 days ago. What are you talking about?" So what
Mhm.
inspired you to add these extremely important specific details that are a warning for anyone that wants to get in a relationship that these things could happen? Like, why did you add these details?
Well, unfortunately that you relate to it, but exactly what you're saying is that it is so true. Like Owen doubles down in who he is, and his
Hmm.
abusive tendencies after they move in together. After he traps her in a way, right? Now they
Right.
are in the house. So
Yeah.
that's when it starts to come out. And a lot of what I'm looking at starts from what is the power dynamic and the imbalance of one when it comes to just gender roles,
Hmm.
um,
Okay.
in a relationship. Um, and so that's kind of where that started out. And that it is true that that's
Hmm.
when things really start to come out is after the commitment, when we take the next step. It said
Right.
later on that they were in a relationship for 6 years, which kind of explains why Ellie doesn't just leave right away. Um,
Hmm.
that some of this comes out more and more, um, as they have to be more committed, as they're about to be married, then maybe Owen now has these ideals that, oh, who a wife's supposed to be or what have you. It's that
Hmm.
they have a big age gap too. That's another thing. And that was last week. I mean, you're right. Like so many people say that. I've never been in a relationship with a man, but I've experienced um assault by one, and just that things like that was last week, or oh that was so that's just like the worst excuse, but so many people use it.
I
um
know. I've only seen one person use it, and it took me until 38 years old to hear it. What?
really.
Yeah, and then I see it in this film, and I said, "Wait a second, is this a common thing?"
It feels like it, that
I guess.
yeah, I think it's, at least talking about Owen, is that
Right.
so much of his behavior is he's consistently removing himself from his actions, that
Hmm.
he's so not aware of what he does that almost
Hmm.
like, oh, that was last week, that's not me, in a way.
Right.
That's just another tactic to remove myself from that bad action I committed last week.
Right. And then she's left there standing confused. So
Yeah.
if anyone's listening and this has happened to you, this person's probably a problematic person because I take responsibility. I'm very big on overly taking
Yep.
responsibility for my actions. And I would never say, oh, I did that even 10 years ago. I'd say I did that 10 years ago and I still did it. And maybe I still feel bad. I'm still trying to make it right,
Yeah.
even though I did it 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
switching gears more to you as a filmmaker. I'm sure you've been asked this before. I'm going to ask it to you again. Now, what are some of the hardest things about looking young? I mean, many think I'm 22 to 28 and I'm 38. So there's a lot of issues that come with looking young.
Mhm.
And number two, being a female filmmaker. What are some of the problems with this?
Yeah, the looking young is like, it's hard to talk about because I feel like some people think it's like a humble brag, but I'm just 24 and people think I'm
Right.
16, which is like, that ends up being like, so I'll use an example from my day job. I work at the
Hmm.
historical society in my town.
Okay.
And so a lot of the donors and the members skew a little older. So I'll be at these events and they'll be talking to me, and they'll either think that I'm in high school, or that I work for the historical society for like a college credit or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
like, no, I'm I'm a peer, and
Right.
they
Right.
mean well, they're nice people, but it's almost,
Hmm.
it really does start as like a talking down, like, oh, you'll grow up one day, kid. And so it's just weird interactions, that I'm sure you've experienced things like that, like feeling like, um, they don't think you have a place because of how
Yeah.
young you look, or if you're a
Right.
woman.
Hmm.
I love getting advice. I love hearing from people who've experienced more than me. But
Mhm.
a lot of times, if that comes from a man, it can be pretty patronizing to
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
young woman, and that happens a lot in filmmaking. And then
Hmm.
being, as you said, rare to be a female filmmaker. When I was in film school, my classes were mostly women, almost
Hmm.
75% women. And now, the most recent film festival I was at, I was the only woman who was had showed my film there. That was a
Wow.
part. Yeah, and I don't know why it is. I don't know why it's so rare. I mean, the
Hmm.
top 100 grossing films of the past year, only 6 of them were directed by women. Um,
Yeah.
so that's just without going into like specific moments. That itself is such a struggle. It's
Interesting. Well, my prediction, I am a trained psychic, but I don't talk about that much. I think you're going to be paving the way for more women. So we're going to switch gears because this is a short interview, but I'd
okay.
say look out for Kayla Marriott more if you're listening. All right. So this film, uh, it also depicts reactive abuse and how the victim, who in this case did she almost nothing wrong. She was pretty much innocent, I would say, or 100% innocent. And she's alone, she's anxious, clearly unwell while the abuser has a new wife at the end of the film. He has a new wife. He's moved on to the next victim, or maybe he's reformed himself. We don't know. But she's still not doing well months or years later. So it's clear that the trauma from abuse and gaslighting for years has left her with symptoms that she's still dealing with. And I know this personally. So, what are your thoughts on reactive abuse and trauma basically ruining your life forever for several years and the other
Yeah,
person's just fine?
yeah. I have a lot of experience with grief. I've lost a lot of people. So taking that experience, that it's not something that you ever get over, that you just learn to
Mm,
live with, that's the kind of that this just goes on for years.
mm,
That's kind of why I felt like that was important, because like we've been talking, like it's just so true that that's
hmm.
how people experience trauma. But then that he is just fine and he has a wife,
Yeah, right.
um, is also so true. And that's why the ending and the way I created the arc was so important, that you spend most of the film not knowing if he is alive or not. And then to the end, that he is alive and he's fine. To me, that's almost scarier than any horror movie I've ever seen. Is like, it would have been better if he wasn't, that he
Right.
feels fine, that the abuser gets to just live on, similar to how he never took ownership in the relationship. And she has
Hmm.
to sit there and deal with it for the rest of her life. And
Right.
I hope, if how I structured the film, if anything, when people walk away from that, that's something that they can either realize that that's the case for a lot of people if they didn't know that
Mhm.
before, or they can find comfort in knowing that that's what a lot of people go through.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
So I guess this leads me right to my next question. So should his abuse be told to others, or should other women or men be warned? Should it be made public? Uh, this kind of relates to cancel culture, and then I want to get to my next and final question. But when you have someone out there on the loose who is terrorizing people, it's a fine line between slander and defamation
Mm-hmm.
and just doing a service and telling society, hey, this person's out there and
Yeah.
they're probably going to ruin someone else's life again, as
Yeah.
they've done it multiple times, possibly.
Yeah. That um I think that goes to the survivor,
Hmm.
because if they've been abused or if they've been assaulted, um they've lost autonomy in their body, in their story. And so then I think it's up to the survivor, if they want to tell that, because then you notice that a lot of times that when, specifically if a woman speaks out against a man about something, they
Hmm.
tend to be the one who's scrutinized. um, are you telling the truth, things like that. So
Right.
because they've lost autonomy from experiencing that abuse, I think it's, they deserve to get ownership back and decide if they want it to be public. Um,
Right. Right.
So I think ultimately it's a very personal choice to every situation if because they deserve that to decide if they want that to be public. So it's hard
Yeah.
because, you're so right that it feels important to warn people, but then
Mhm.
to give the autonomy back to the person to decide if they want their abuse to become public, because then they have to relive it again.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna unsolicited give you, well, I'm not gonna give you my entire idea for a film
Okay.
that I already have, but here's an idea, which, it's like a comedian being told jokes to tell. So I'm not really saying that you should do this, but just an idea that
I
came
love
to
to hear.
mind.
Yeah.
What if the wife becomes the final girl and that's where the
Well,
abuse stops?
mm-hmm.
She's like a typical horror movie. That's it.
Yeah.
It ends here. She takes him down. She teaches him all the lessons that
Yeah.
Ellie couldn't teach him. And then maybe they work together and they teach this guy a lesson. And here's some justice. So that's my follow-up movie for this one. But
Yeah.
to wrap
Sequel.
this up, you are making this into a feature. Please tell
Yeah.
us about your plans to make this into a feature and also tell our listeners where we can find you, social media, list all of your links.
Yeah, so I'm writing this as a feature film. It feels
Hmm.
so the story feels so important for it to hopefully get out there to more people. I feel like there's so much more I can tell in a longer format. Um, the slow process of the unraveling of abuse that can come in a relationship can be told greater over a feature length. And
Hmm.
then I also made this by myself with a crew of one and with a budget of like $250. So also
Wow.
the story deserves a service of, possibly being able to be the house built on a set and then we can move things around and really play
Hmm.
with all the different filmmaking devices to play with Ellie's psyche, kind of what I was trying to do in the editing of the short, but go even further, push that even further. So that's why I'm writing it as a
Yeah.
feature. And social media, my film social media is K Marriott Films, Marriott like the hotel. And then
Mhm.
I have a website, which is just my full name, which is Kayla Marriott. And then this short that we've been talking about is going to be shown at Newark IFF Film Festival
Okay.
in Newark, New Jersey on June 24th of this year.
June 24th. Maybe
Saturday.
I'll be there. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll be there. And I
Okay.
want to see the feature and I want to see this man taken down. I want a success story. I want a happy
No,
ending for this.
I
And I
know.
want a happy ending for Ellie too.
I know.
So we'll see what happens. All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank
Super
you. Thanks for
interesting.
having
Super proud of you. Good luck to
me.
all
Thank
your
you.
endeavors. Keep in touch and
Yeah.
back to you in the studio.